Hello, everyone, and welcome to this project management focused channel. My name is Candace Porter, and today we're going to be looking at a tool, a decision matrix. This is a great tool that you can use to evaluate and prioritize options using weighted criteria. This tool could be used for leaders within an organization when trying to determine which projects will be approved for the coming year, especially when resources are limited. This is also great for a project team to use if you're working to determine the best solution that you want to move forward with when executing a project. Surprisingly, this can also be useful in your personal life. I will give you two examples today on how to use this tool. To get started, we're going to follow 4 easy steps, and I'm going to be working through an Excel spreadsheet. The first thing that we're going to do is list the options that need to be evaluated and prioritized. The second thing that we're going to do is brainstorm and refine the evaluation criteria that will be used based on the situation at hand. The third thing, we are going to assign a relative weight to each criterion based on how important it is. The fourth and final step, we are going to evaluate each option against the criteria. This handy tool that I'm going to show you, this Excel spreadsheet, is then going to calculate on the back end and let us know which option best meets the criteria based on how we have gone through and entered the scores. Just so you know, this tool can be used individually or it could be used by a group. For example, I could say there are 5 leaders that are going to individually go through and enter scores based on the options and the criteria and see which one surfaces for each of them. I will say that this tool is great for helping you be more objective with your decision making. There's still a little bit of subjectivity, however, if each individual is going through, and I think I can help you understand that as we work through today. This spreadsheet has 4 different tabs, and I'm going to walk you through each one of them. The first one is the base information. This is going to have our project or solution list, our options being prioritized. It's also going to have the evaluation criteria and the weight of the criteria. This is going to be steps 1, 2, and 3. We are then going to look at where we evaluate each option against the criteria. This is where we will enter some scores here. This is step 4. The other 2 tabs in this Excel, one, this is where it is going to calculate and prioritize our options based on how we have entered and evaluated them. The last one is just a calculations tab. You won't do anything on this. It's just so that you can take a look and see how everything calculated out. So again, let's start with the base information tab. I have already brainstormed the different options. In this situation, we are looking to implement a new solution. The project managers across the organization, they want a new tool that's going to be collaborative and help them better manage their projects. So we have narrowed it down. Let's say that these are our top 10 solutions based on all of the options we've looked at. Love the names here, crystal names. So we've got amethyst, rose quartz, jasper, jade, moonstone, agate, smoky quartz, tiger eye, amber, and opal. These are the solutions or the systems that we're exploring implementing. Down below, we have brainstormed the criteria that we want to evaluate each of these systems against. We have worked with all the project managers and leaders to say what is most important. Meets documented must-have requirements. Time to implement the solution is less than 6 months. It reduces manual entry of data for employees or the project managers using these tools. The cost of this solution is acceptable. We have a $250,000 budget for this. Platform is easy to use. Solution is visually appealing. Quality training is provided by the vendor and meets documented nice-to-have requirements. So we now have our options listed up here, our criteria. We now need to go to step 3. So of this criteria, what's important, what's more important, and what's significantly more important. So if you look here for our weight scale, we're going to put either a 1, a 2, or a 3, which is going to signify the weighted criteria in each of these cells next to the criteria. The first one, meets documented must-have requirements. That's going to be significantly more important. The next one, time to implement solution, is less than 6 months. That's more important than some of them. However, we may have a little bit of flexibility there. I'm going to put a 2 as the weighted criteria. Reduces manual entry of data for employees. We're going to say that that is also more important. Cost of solution is acceptable. Again, we have a hard budget, $250,000, not a penny more. I'm going to say that's significantly more important on the weighted criteria. The platform is easy to use. That's going to be, the change management side of it. Let's say that's more important. Solution is visually appealing. It says criteria 6 here. I'm going to say that's important. Quality training is provided by the vendor. That is more important. And the last criteria here, meets documented nice-to-have requirements. Okay, we've got our must-have listed as criteria 1, our nice-to-have requirements. I'm going to say that's important. We now have our options up here, our project or solution list that we're exploring, all of our criteria listed, and now all of the weight of criteria listed. We've checked the boxes for step 1, step 2, and step 3. I now need to go through, this is the next tab here called Project Evaluation. And I am going to look at each of the projects or solutions here, and I'm going to rate them based on this evaluation scale. So I'm going to look at solution number 1, Amethyst, and say, how well do I think it meets the documented must-have criteria? And since we've done a very thorough job of looking at each of these solutions, I can confidently go down here and say, do I strongly disagree that Amethyst meets all documented must-have requirements? Do I disagree? Do I neither agree nor disagree? Do I agree? Or do I strongly agree? I'm going to enter the score for each one of these. So I'm going to compare solution number 1, Amethyst, against this criteria and give it a score from this evaluation scale. I am then going to say, well, do I feel Amethyst meets the requirement, which is the time to implement the solution in less than 6 months? I'm then going to look at criteria 3, criteria 4, criteria 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I'm going to go through and do that for each of our solutions or projects. I have now gone through and evaluated each of the solutions against the criteria and entered a score based on the evaluation scale here. So you'll see I either have a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 in each of the cells for each of the options. This is where the fun stuff begins, because I am now going to go to the next tab, the priority list here, the priority list. And this is where I get to see which one of the solutions rises to the top as far as the best solution as compared against our criteria. You'll see project number 9, Amber, has the highest total evaluation score. We are looking for the highest score when exploring which solution best meets the criteria. Amber has a 54 as the overall score. Smoky Quartz comes in as a second, as we're looking at a 45 score. Amethyst comes in with a 42 score, and so forth. This right here tells me that based on the outlined criteria and the options being evaluated, that I may want to move forward with implementing Amber as the solution of choice. If I want to dig a little bit deeper and look at the scores that were calculated, I can go back and take a look at this calculations tab. And if you look at Amber, which is option number 9 here, you can see the scores, the raw scores here, and their total project score. So there's quite a few 12s in here. And that tells me that I felt very strongly that it met the criteria. So if I go back to project evaluation, just to look at how maybe Project Amber scored, I've got 4s in here, strongly agree, strongly agree, strongly agree. And based on these 3 criteria, I could also go back and look at the first tab that we completed. So I feel strongly agreed here. And that's for criteria 1, 2, and 3. And now if I go back and take a look at 1, 2, and 3, those were significantly more important than some of the other criteria that we have. So they are all 3s. We rated them as 4s here. And when you calculate those out, that's why you're going to see that there's 12s in these cells. So 4 times 3 equals 12. So that's how these calculations are working. That's how these calculations are going to tell us the best solution based on our options and the criteria. This is the first example. This is a template. If you're interested in getting it, please look at the comments below. I'll have a link to where you can go out and obtain this template, and then you would have the ability to tailor it to your needs. There are so many possibilities regarding how you can use this. I love decision-making matrix. I'm also going to show you another example. This is an example that I actually worked through with my sister as she was looking to move to a new city. Take a look at this second example here, where my sister really was exploring which city would be best for her to move to. She was able to narrow it down to her top 3 on her own. However, she kept getting stuck based on emotions rather than looking at objective criteria. So she decided she's going to go out and visit these 3 cities. And while she was there, she was going to explore what was most important to her. When asked what this criteria was, the cost of living, is it within her budget in each of these cities? What was the crime in the desired neighborhood? How is the housing availability? She wants to buy a house. What's on the market? Are there dog parks within 5 miles? Is the neighborhood walkable? What's that score? And are there employment options for her in these actual cities? So Reno, Kansas City, and Denver, these are the options. She only has 3 that she is trying to prioritize and choose from. And then she only has 6 criteria. So you can see that you don't necessarily have to have 10 different options and 8 different criteria. However, the template's built for you in that way if you choose to use it. Cost of living within budget, that is significantly more important. She needs to live within her budget. Crime in desired neighborhood, more important. Housing availability, more important. Dog parks within 5 miles, important, but maybe not going to be the deciding factor. Neighborhood walkability, she really does like to walk her dogs. Let's give that a significantly more important. Employment options, significantly more important. We now have the weight of the criteria, the evaluation criteria, and the options to choose from. So step 1, 2, and 3. Going on to the next tab. Now it would be going through and saying, Reno, cost of living, is it within budget? Okay, strongly agree. We'll now work through and fill in scores for each of these cities before we see which one best meets the criteria. I have gone through and evaluated each of the 3 cities against the criteria. When I did this, the way that I worked through it, Reno, is Reno cost of living within my budget? Do I strongly agree with that, or do I strongly disagree? And I came up with either 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. It could be somewhere in between as well. So for Reno, is the crime in the desired neighborhood within acceptable limits? Do I strongly agree with that? Do I strongly disagree? Or is it somewhere in between? So I've evaluated each of the cities against each of these. Are we ready? Drum roll, please. Which one has gone to the top of the list as far as prioritization? Kansas City best meets the criteria. Reno, a second, tied with Denver, a third. Where do you think my sister ended up? Anyway, you can also go back, you can double check your calculations if you'd like, based on the weighted criteria and how you scored each of the cities against that criteria. I hope that this example gave you new ways of thinking about how you may be able to use this decision-making matrix. It can be really helpful when you're working with a bunch of people and you're trying to agree on one option, or maybe prioritize top 3 or top 5 options based on decision-making criteria. I've also used this in a way where everyone agrees on the options, everyone agrees on the criteria, everyone agrees on the weighted criteria, and then people go through individually and compare the options against the criteria. And so I may do it slightly differently based on my thoughts than another project manager. So our scores may look a little bit different, and the prioritization list may look a little bit different. So if I have 5 different people go through and evaluate using this form, we may have 5 slightly different scores. And so you can consolidate them and average them if you so choose. I would just ensure that however the decision's being made is laid clearly out at the very beginning. So everyone, we're going to work through and list all of our options. We're going to agree upon the criteria and the weight of each criteria. And then we're going to individually score using this Excel spreadsheet. And then I want everyone to submit their Excel to me, and I'm going to consolidate everything and average the scores. So if we have 5 people doing it, I'm going to add the scores up for each of the options and then divide by 5. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. You could also work through and have everyone agree upon how you are evaluating each of the options against the criteria. So maybe I put this on a projector or share it in a Zoom meeting, and we go through and we need to agree upon what scale is used and then how it's scored for each of these. Be creative. Again, if you're working towards making a decision and it's proving to be challenging, this could be a great option. I am Candace Porter. Thank you for joining me today on this channel, All Things Project Management. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the little bell below, and that way you're notified. I have some great videos that are going to be released in the near future. Thank you again for joining today. If you want to explore how to get a copy of this decision-making matrix tool, take a look in the comments. I'll have a link in there. Have a great day.